not scroll away, because this will completely redefine your idea of adventure. This is Colorado. It has a mysterious sea of sand, where millions of grains can produce a deep rumble, as if the earth itself were singing. But deep within the Rocky Mountains lies a world that few people ever see. Among forests stretching to the horizon, a handful of windows still glow inside cabins located many miles from the nearest town. There, a single heavy snowstorm can make the road disappear overnight, and when winter retreats, the very forest that once sheltered them can become a threat. So what makes them give up modern comforts to live in isolation amid the wild beauty of Colorado? Stretching from the eastern plains to the plateaus, canyons, and mountain ranges of the West, Colorado is a land where the scenery can change dramatically within a short journey. Rising above it all are the Rocky Mountains, resembling a massive spine of stone running through western North America. In Rocky Mountain National Park alone, 60 peaks rise more than 3,600 meters above sea level. As elevation increases, the air becomes thinner and temperatures fall. Dense forests gradually thin out before disappearing near the tree line, giving way to open alpine tundra where powerful winds make it difficult for trees to grow. Running along the highest peaks is the Continental Divide, a natural boundary that determines which direction water flows across the continent. Air masses crossing the mountains also create major differences in moisture and snowfall. While the western slopes are generally wetter and receive more snow, many areas to the east are drier and windier. However, actual weather conditions vary from one valley to another depending on elevation and the direction each slope faces. Over the course of a year, the mountain landscape undergoes an almost complete transformation. Snow gradually retreats from the higher slopes, sending water into streams and lakes throughout the valleys. Meadows then fill with wildflowers before long periods of sunshine leave the vegetation increasingly dry. As the cycle nears its end, aspen forests turn brilliant gold, and snow once again appears on the highest peaks. Colorado's most striking contrast appears in the San Luis Valley. At the base of the snow-covered Sangre de Cristo Mountains, lies Great Sand Dunes, home to the tallest sand dunes in North America. Wind carries sand across the valley and traps it against the mountains, where it gradually accumulates into a vast sea of sand. When millions of grains slide down the slopes together, air is forced through the spaces between them, producing a deep rumbling sound that makes it seem as though the earth itself is singing. Yet this place is not entirely dry. In spring, melting snow from the Sangre de Cristo Mountains creates Medano Creek, a seasonal stream flowing along the base of the dunes. The contrast between hot sand, flowing water, and snow-covered mountains reveals how dramatically Colorado's terrain and water sources can change within a short distance. Below the tree line, some cabins stand on forested mountain slopes that offer protection from the elements. Pine canopies help reduce the force of the wind, but the location of each home must still be carefully chosen according to sunlight, slope, water sources, and access to the nearest road. In Colorado, a place with a beautiful view is not necessarily suitable for long-term living. Reading the landscape when choosing where to live is not a modern discovery. Centuries ago, the ancestral Pueblo people learned to use cliffs, sunlight, and small water sources to build their lives in this harsh environment. From the high mountain peaks, the journey continues into southwestern Colorado, where arid plateaus are divided by deep canyons. At Mesa Verde, numerous stone structures remain sheltered within large alcoves in the cliffs, preserving evidence of how people adapted to this land centuries ago. Viewed from across the canyon, these settlements almost blend into the reddish-brown sandstone. The overhanging cliffs form natural roofs that reduce direct exposure to wind, rain, and snow. During summer, the shade lessens the intensity of the sun. As the sun sits lower in the sky during winter, its rays can reach deeper into some of the alcoves, bringing additional warmth to the spaces within. But a secure shelter alone was not enough to sustain life. The ancestral Pueblo people had to climb steep paths to reach the mesa tops, where they grew corn, beans, and squash. After each harvest, food was carried back to the settlements and stored in designated rooms in preparation for winter or periods of poor harvests. Water was even more essential. In this semi-arid plateau region, rainwater and melting snow could seep through layers of sandstone before emerging at certain cliff alcoves. Building near these small springs gave communities access to a precious source of water, although the amount available still varied with the weather. Mesa Verde is therefore remarkable for more than its dwellings built into the cliffs. It shows how people learned long ago to use the landscape for protection from heat and cold, settle near water sources, cultivate crops, and store food for harsh seasons. Centuries later, cabins hidden deep within Colorado's forests still follow many of the same principles. Construction materials have changed from stone to wood, but before turning the wilderness into a home, people must still answer the same ancient questions. Where will the water come from? Which direction should the house face? Can it remain standing when nature becomes unforgiving? After centuries of adapting to cliffs and canyons, Colorado tells a different story today. At the eastern foot of the Rocky Mountains stands Denver, the state's largest city and home to more than 700,000 people. Known as the Mile High City because its elevation reaches approximately 1 mile above sea level, Denver combines modern neighborhoods, technology, and business with easy access to nature. Within a short drive, highways leave the skyline behind and begin climbing toward forests, rivers, and mountain valleys. For many people, Denver represents convenience. Yet for others, it is simply the last stop before choosing a completely different way of life. Just outside Denver, the landscape reveals another side of Colorado. Towering walls of red sandstone rise naturally from the earth, forming Red Rocks Amphitheater, one of the most famous outdoor concert venues in the world. Long before musicians performed here, these massive rock formations had already shaped a natural amphitheater. Their unique arrangement reflects sound with remarkable clarity, allowing music to travel through the open air, while the surrounding cliffs become part of the performance itself. Every year, thousands of people gather beneath the stars to experience concerts unlike anywhere else. Here, geology is not simply part of the scenery, it becomes part of the music. Yet beyond the concerts, highways, and neighborhoods, another Colorado quietly begins. As the roads climb higher into the Rocky Mountains, traffic fades, cell phone signals weaken, and houses become increasingly scarce. Eventually, paved roads give way to gravel tracks winding through dense forests. For the people who choose to live here, the conveniences of the city are gradually replaced by something else. Electricity may come from solar panels. Water may come from a private well. Every winter storm, every fallen tree, and every mechanical failure becomes a problem they must solve themselves. Only then does the true meaning of living in Colorado's wilderness begin. As winter comes to an end, snow on the mountain peaks begins to melt. Water flows down into the valleys, feeding streams and lakes, while making Colorado's waterfalls more powerful. Bridal Veil Falls plunges approximately 111 meters and is considered the tallest free-falling waterfall in the state. Directly above the falls stands a historic hydroelectric power plant, evidence of how people once harnessed the force of mountain water to generate electricity. But for remote cabins, powerful natural water flows do not mean that clean water is always available inside the home. Water usually comes from wells or is stored in large tanks. Electric pumps deliver it into the cabin, making the water and power systems directly dependent on each other. A single battery system failure can cause the faucets to stop running. When the snow begins to melt, residents inspect pipes, pumps, and storage tanks for cracks caused by freezing. Drainage channels around the foundation must also be cleared so spring runoff does not enter the cabin or erode the surrounding ground. Longer days with more sunlight allow solar panels to generate more electricity. The snow-free months are also used to repair equipment, grow fast-growing vegetables, and prepare food for the months when roads become difficult to access. Fruits and vegetables are turned into preserves, dried or frozen. Beans, rice, flour, and canned foods are stocked before the roads become difficult to travel. Before the first cold spell arrives, residents must ensure that the cabin will continue to have electricity during severe weather, that the heating system operates safely, and that the water supply remains uninterrupted when temperatures fall below freezing. In the kitchen, high elevation also changes familiar routines. Because water boils at a lower temperature, beans and stews take longer to cook, while baking recipes sometimes require adjustments. When snow covers the roof and daylight hours grow shorter, electricity production also declines. Stored battery power then becomes the primary source of electricity, while a generator is kept as a backup. A wood stove or propane heating system keeps the cabin warm while preventing the pipes from freezing. Here, water, electricity, heat, and food do not function independently. A power outage can stop the water pump. A fuel shortage can leave the cabin without heat. Self-sufficient living, therefore, depends on work completed months in advance, while the weather is still calm. Keeping an off-grid home running requires constant effort, yet many people believe the rewards are worth every challenge. Each winter, millions of visitors travel to Colorado for its world-famous ski resorts, including Aspen, Vail, Breckenridge, and Telluride. They come searching for perfect snow, breathtaking scenery, and unforgettable adventures. But for those who live in the mountains, winter is not a vacation. It is simply another season of everyday life. After clearing fresh snow from the driveway, Many residents spend their free time skiing, snowshoeing, or exploring quiet forest trails that begin just beyond their own cabins. When the snow melts, those same mountains become places to hike, ride horses, fish for trout, or climb Colorado's famous 14ers. Nature is not somewhere they travel to. It surrounds them every day. Perhaps the greatest reward is something far less visible. Instead of traffic and crowded neighborhoods, they wake to the sound of wind moving through pine forests. At night, after the lights inside the cabin are turned off, the Milky Way stretches across one of the darkest skies in America. Life here is rarely easier than life in the city, but for those who choose these mountains, freedom is measured not by convenience, but by waking up each morning exactly where they want to be. Among the dark green pine forests, groves of aspen stand out with their slender white trunks and millions of golden leaves trembling in the wind. Beneath this peaceful beauty, however, cabin residents must learn to share their surroundings with wild neighbors. Encounters are not always dangerous, but one mistake in food storage can attract wildlife to the home. Black bears generally avoid people, but their powerful sense of smell makes them highly attracted to garbage and animal feed. For this reason, residents must use locked bear-resistant trash containers and put all food away before nightfall. Mountain lions are much harder to detect because they move silently around dusk. They can threaten small livestock, requiring homesteads to install secure fencing and keep animals inside enclosed shelters at night, instead of relying only on Great Pyrenees guard dogs. The most surprising encounter may be with a moose, a massive animal that can weigh nearly half a ton. Moose are not always afraid of people. A mother protecting her calf, or a male during mating season, can react with extreme aggression. Dogs are especially likely to make a moose feel threatened because their appearance resembles that of wolves. When a moose appears, residents keep their dogs indoors, avoid approaching it to record videos, and always leave the animal a clear escape route. If the moose lowers its head, pins back its ears, or raises the hair along its neck, it is a warning that a person has come too close. As darkness falls, residents check the garbage, bring animals indoors, and examine any fresh tracks in the snow. Living in nature does not mean fighting the wilderness. It means understanding animal behavior, removing anything that might attract wildlife, and knowing when to step back. Yet tracks in the snow reveal only part of the forest's movement. Sometimes, the greatest danger unfolds in complete silence, without leaving any visible trace. As winter retreats from the mountain peaks, melting snow flows into the valleys, filling rivers and streams with new life while bringing a hidden danger. If temperatures rise too quickly, the large volume of water can overwhelm natural drainage systems. The ground around the cabin softens, forest roads turn into mud, and runoff can erode the foundation. Residents must clear drainage channels early, inspect culverts, and avoid driving heavy vehicles across unstable ground whenever possible. As the ground gradually dries, summer arrives with meadows filled with brilliant wildflowers, yet the heat quickly draws moisture from the forest vegetation. Lightning from storms that produce little rain can strike dry vegetation and ignite a wildfire. Prevention must begin before any smoke appears. Dry leaves and other flammable materials are removed from the area closest to the cabin walls. Farther away, grass is kept short, shrubs are thinned, and low branches are cleared to prevent flames from climbing into the forest canopy. Metal roofs and gutters must also be kept clean, so burning embers cannot become trapped. During fall, mountain temperatures can drop sharply after sunset. This is when residents inspect evacuation routes, clear fallen trees, and store enough fuel for their vehicles. Important documents and medications are packed and kept ready in case a wildfire erupts or an early winter storm arrives. When winter begins, the danger shifts to avalanches and extreme cold. Major storms can erase roads and reduce visibility to almost nothing. Before crossing dangerous slopes, residents must check the latest avalanche forecast and carry an avalanche transceiver, a probe, and a rescue shovel. In places without cell phone service, an injury or the first signs of hypothermia can become life-threatening. Although a satellite device can send an SOS signal, rescue operations still depend heavily on the weather and the complexity of the terrain. Every season in Colorado has its own beauty, but each one also brings severe challenges. Living deep in the wilderness does not mean waiting for danger to appear. It means learning to recognize the smallest changes in nature and adapting before the next season begins. The many miles separating homes do not weaken the bonds among mountain residents. Instead, harsh weather and delays in repair or emergency services make relationships between neighbors especially important. When a generator stops working, a fallen tree blocks the road, or a vehicle becomes trapped in the snow, the first person able to help is often a neighbor living on the other side of the forest. They share tools, bring replacement parts, help clear roads, and check on cabins while the owners are away. This support may be repaid with a basket of vegetables, a freshly baked loaf of bread, or simply a promise to be there when help is needed. These connections become more visible at markets in small mountain towns. Cold-tolerant vegetables, honey, preserves, bread, and handmade goods are sold amid music and the aroma of hot food. For people living far from populated areas, these markets are more than places to buy and sell goods. They are opportunities to reconnect, ask about one another's health, and exchange practical information. A story about a recently washed-out road, a warning about a fallen tree, or advice on repairing a water pump can save someone else from days of difficulty. In places where professional services may take hours to arrive, information can be just as important as food and fuel. When snow covers the roads, community life shifts into a different rhythm. In Breckenridge, Ullerfest brings parades, bonfires, and outdoor activities into the winter cold. It is not a tradition shared by every cabin resident, but gatherings like this show how mountain towns have learned to turn harsh weather into an opportunity for connection. However, most connections do not happen at crowded festivals. Sometimes they consist of only a few minutes of conversation at a supply store, gas station, or post office. For someone who has spent many days without seeing another person, even a short conversation can provide a necessary pause before returning to the mountains. A neighbor may pull a vehicle out of the snow, deliver a replacement part, or call to check in after a storm. But when the days grow shorter, the roads become more difficult, and the lights of the nearest home are many miles away, everyone must eventually return to their own cabin. These relationships make isolated life less vulnerable, but they cannot completely erase loneliness. When the festival fires go out, the town lights disappear behind the pine forest, and the cabin door closes. Those who live here must still face the most private part of their choice, the long nights without another human voice. Far from the lights of Denver and the urban communities along the Front Range, night reveals a different kind of beauty in the remote regions of Colorado. Around Black Canyon of the Gunnison, Mesa Verde, and viewing locations along the Colorado Stargazing Trail, the sky is almost completely free from the glow of city lights. On clear nights with little moonlight from midsummer through early fall, the brightest part of the Milky Way appears like a river of stardust stretching across the sky. For cabin residents, this sight is not an experience reserved for a vacation. It waits just outside the window after the final light inside the home has been turned off. But darkness also brings a silence that not everyone can adapt to. When the sounds of traffic, sirens, and machinery disappear, even the smallest sounds of nature become more distinct. The wind changing direction among the pine trees, a dry branch breaking in the forest, or snow suddenly sliding from the roof can startle someone who is new to living alone. Silence does not always bring peace. For people accustomed to city life, spending many hours without hearing another human voice can create anxiety and make time seem to pass more slowly. Winter makes this challenge even more intense. As the days grow shorter, roads become difficult to travel, and a storm can keep residents inside their cabins for several days. Maintaining emotional stability is therefore an essential part of independent living. Some residents follow a structured daily routine, waking at the same time each morning, working outdoors while daylight remains, and spending the evening reading or repairing small items. They remain in contact with family members and arrange specific times for neighbors to check on one another after major storms. This way of life also comes at a considerable cost. Battery systems, generators, heating stoves, pipes, and vehicles all require maintenance. A mistake in calculating fuel or stored water can have far more serious consequences than it would near a city. People living here control much of their own time, but they are also responsible for nearly every system that keeps the cabin functioning. For some, the silence and vast open sky provide a sense of freedom that city life cannot offer. For others, the distance, constant workload, and long winter months eventually become reasons to leave. As the stars begin to fade and the first light appears on the mountain slopes, the final question of the journey emerges. After all the risks and sacrifices, what makes people continue choosing to remain in isolated cabins deep within Colorado? From the Pueblo communities built into the cliffs to the wooden cabins hidden deep in the forest, the questions of survival in Colorado have never changed. Where does the water come from? How is warmth maintained? How long can a person endure isolation? Modern technology has made life here easier, but it has not eliminated the need for discipline, hard work, and responsibility. For those who choose to stay, freedom does not mean escaping every limitation. It means learning to live within the limits of the mountains and forests. What about you? Would you be ready to spend an entire winter in an isolated cabin deep in Colorado?